Hello, everybody, and welcome to another week where we have two guys and we are talking about a certain subject. And this subject we're going to be talking about this week is raids and how the difference is between how Shadowlands has evolved into a different type. What I see as to be a little bit of a different type of raid experience to what it has in the past. And we have our guild leader slash raid leader Nergul here, who has been doing this for a very long time. So we figured he would give us a little bit more of an in-depth look of where he kind of sees things as a raid leader perspective. To myself and to Moggom, who we both are just lonely peons in the raid, attempting to not hit drums in the middle of the raid or anything like that. So it has happened to us all. So as you guys know, my name is Snalydo here. We have Moggom, who is below, and Nergul, who is to my left. And let's see how things are going. Nergul, since you are our guest here, how are you doing? How was your weekend? How are things been? What's going on with yourself?
So doing great. It's been a busy weekend for me. My wife just went to Florida, so I'm trying to corral a house full of animals that are used to mom kind of taking care of them. But other than that, been good. Just a lot of Mythic Plus this weekend, because of the weekly and stuff like that, and good fun that way.
Yeah. How many chests do you? I should say, how many Mythic Pluses do you think you ran this week?
Oh God. Probably about 20 between all of my characters.
Yeah. I think this week is like one of those weeks where everyone was just like, we must do as many as possible because I got 29 done this past week,
Jeez.
and I'm just like I'm like I don't know how I got that many, but it works. I'm good, so cool with me. So, but yeah, I fully agree with you. Like this week, it was just one of those weeks. It was just got to get as many mythic pluses done as possible. So it's good. I'm happy that you are corralling the kids,
For babies,
the fur babies, and getting them all taken care of. That's good. Well, I'm happy that you're able to take some time out of your week, be able to hang out with us, and talk about Warcraft as we all love and admire. Moggom, how about yourself? How was you? How are you? How was your weekend? How are things?
Great. Can't complain. Spent a lot of time with the kids. Started planning Aiden's birthday party
Oh, oh,
because he turned 6 on the 2nd. So,
oh.
you know, that's a
What?
lot of fun. They only have what, nine more days of school.
9 more
So
days. Oh God.
9 more days. That's fine. I mean, that's fine. They'll be home and they'll all go do stuff every day. So, it's exciting stuff. I enjoy having them home more and not having them gone all day every day where I only see them for a couple hours. So.
You're gonna make Kim take him and go to the park. Go to the park.
Well, she goes. I mean, she's gone right now. She took them to go see. They're like different households where dogs are at, and they go and they play, and they come back at 3:30. So 5.5 hours.
Nice, nice. Well, good, good. How's your Warcraft life this past week? Good.
Good. A lot of runs. A lot of runs. I
Yeah.
ran what, eight 14 pluses, and then an additional like 10 or 12 pluses. I think I ran like 30 almost total.
Yeah.
So a lot of dungeons because my warrior and my shaman need 4 14s. My druid actually got 4 12 pluses. So that was a
Yeah.
lot of runs, but I'm finally starting to push the druid. He's now what, 210, 211.
Yeah. But doesn't it feel like when you're playing like one character you kind of enjoy, you can kind of just push through, and it doesn't feel stale?
Sure. My warrior, it's just get it done. It's just more of a,
Yeah, like that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like for your warrior, you're kind of like, oh, this is what I need to do. Let me just get it done.
I
And
think
then
that's how I
for the
feel for
and for
all
the
of them.
the shaman, you feel the same way. For the druid, you feel the same way.
Yeah.
Oh,
I just want the gear.
I
Just get it done.
I only have that get it done type mentality when it comes to my mage. All my other classes, I'm like, oh, this is fun. I
Well,
know I'm
cause
horrible at it, but it's
prime
fun.
example, last night, we finished our runs and then I realized I had to go do Choregast on my druid. That's why
Oh,
I stayed on another hour afterwards doing it, and then no one wanted to run that I could see, so
why
I had
didn't
to
you
do it
call me?
solo.
You
So I ran it
jerk.
solo, and that was I
I
don't,
So
always,
tired of
I don't,
Chorgast.
oh
I
my
don't
god, it's the
enjoy it.
worst.
I only
It's
have
the
one more
worst.
week, one more week on my druid, and then my legendary will be 235. So I just want to get it there. So today, if I do it today, I'll be
We'll
done
bang it out. We'll bang out after this.
and I'll be done. And then I don't have to go
Bang
back
it
because
out.
I don't care about any extra ones on my druid. And my shaman has his main one. That's all I care about. So
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yes.
My warrior, I'll keep going because I'm going to keep making all of them.
Chorgast isn't bad on one character. It's bad on like 8 characters is when it
Sure.
starts to really feel like crap.
I only say 2 characters. 2 characters
Oh,
a week
man.
is what I get Torghast done.
I wish.
That's it. I don't care if the other ones are behind. I don't care whatever it is. My monk is done. I don't care about any other legendaries for my monk. So I'm good there. So it's like either I'll pick one of the other 2 and then I'll go with them.
Yeah, I'm basically just getting the main spec that I'm playing on my
Yeah.
guys. Like I'm not even getting an LA one on my shaman.
I guess I have too much FOMO. I mean, I know they're supposed to give us a lot more Soul Ash in the next patch, but it's
Mhm.
still, for whatever reason, I'm just scared of the fact that like if I need to swap or change or something like that, I feel like I just don't have it. If like there's no way to catch up, right? So it kind of feels bad, right?
Yeah. Oh, getting a little PTSD from thinking of Torghast.
Oh, I just look
We're
at it
we're
like
getting off
we're-
subject.
I know.
Getting off subject.
I know.
There it is. Now there's the raid leader I know, right? there.
Yes. Stop going to Africa with that thing.
That's right. That's right. Oh, going to Africa.
Anytime Pow talks, that's what you hear.
Oh, maybe.
Get back on topic.
Get back on topic. All right. So anyway, I'm happy that you're here and you were able to join us once again. So what we're all here for is to talk about the raids that is going on with Shadowlands. Now, right now we've only been able to see the one raid from Shadowlands. I don't know why I want to keep calling it Castle Nyalotha, but I know it's Castle Nathria. I think it's because we were in that stupid place way too long and it's just ingrained in my head. But anyway, so
I'll take corruptions back.
I'll take corruptions
Oh,
back.
yeah.
Yes.
People hated them, and now they want them.
Yeah, now they want
I know,
'em.
right?
Now
Right.
they want them. Oh man. So Castle Nathria is what I see to be a little bit of a different type of a dungeon or raid that was in the past. Now we're going to talk a little bit about how everything is what was in the past in comparison to how it was now. We're not going to go all the way far into the past. Now Legion, I was never around, so I really couldn't give you any input on it. I know Moggom wasn't around, so that was the only time. He also took a break, so we really don't have much information about Legion as a raid environment to discuss. So that's why we're going to be talking specifically about BFA in comparison to how it is now. So let's first start off with BFA. BFA, we had three different raids. We had now which are those 3 raids? 4 raids?
If you count the mini raid, I mean,
Well-
I guess if you want to count Crucible or not.
So that's how much I actually raided in. I did not really raid in BFA, except for I'm forgetting on the raid names, believe it or not. But
We got Uldir,
Uldir, which
Battle for Dazara Lore,
Yep.
EP.
Crucible of Storms,
Mm-hmm.
EP, and then Nyalotha.
And Nyalotha. So I was not around for I guess EP, whatever that is. For
Eternal Palace.
Eternal Palace.
yeah,
You
Eternal
were there for
Palace.
that.
Yeah,
know you were.
I was not a part of that. That was the only raid I missed in the expansion.
Okay.
So that was the only one that I kind of missed. So that's why I have a blanket over that. So when with all the raids that I kind of was in during BFA, they seemed very much standard. Being that I only went to the highest difficulty of heroic, it felt like it was very much like, hey, we're going to be doing very basic mechanics. Tank these mobs here. We're going to be pulling in this object here. We're going to be taking this character and pulling them out. It was very plain. There was a handful of really cool mechanics which they started, which I felt like they started in the beginning of the expansion, where it had like the mother fight, Like you had those really interesting fights, which is very, very different. But a lot of them I felt very, very bland to me. Now coming into coming into Shadowlands for myself, I kind of saw it as it was a little bit of a little different. I felt like they had a little more zip to it, because the end bosses for heroic, they ended up it ended up not having so many mechanics as this specific fight did in Castle Nyalotha when you were going against what I said the wrong one again, didn't I?
Castle Nyalotha.
See, I told you, Castle Nathria, when we were going against Sire, where you had a lot more mechanics. I felt like they were a lot more deadly. Like you had very little room for error. So, I know that I probably have the least amount of experience for all of these raids in comparison to you guys. That's why I'm just throwing out my information so that you guys can kind of tell me I'm wrong, because 99% of the time I am when I'm talking about raids. I think thankfully you both are nodding at the same time. So I guess Nergul, do you want to start off first? Because I know that you could probably talk out the clock for 45 minutes about it. So I don't know.
I'll see you guys later. I gotta go.
So I don't.
I'll be calm. But I mean, honestly, like I know you kind of said don't mention Legion, but one of the things that I think is kind of a pretty good comparison to the way Castle Nathria is right now is the way that Tomb of Sargeras went in Legion. There was a lot of I mean, it wasn't a very big raid or anything like that, but there was a couple of nuancy fights. And then especially when you jumped into heroic, some of those difficulties of those fights amped up really, really hard. And a lot of that has to do with the class design, raid design that kind of happened back then that was more focused around things like immunities and stuff like that. There's some of that stuff that still exists today where you can kind of just outright ignore mechanics or cheese mechanics with immunities, but I think they've mostly as a philosophy gotten away from some of those things. But comparing it to, like, say, some of the BFA raids and whatnot, like Uldir was kind of, it wasn't really a raid, it was kind of like a half raid. Mm-hmm. Battle for Czar lore, they started to get a little bit more ambitious with some of their designs on the fights. Things like the Protectors fight, Mechatork was a very different kind of fight. Even I can't even remember the blockade at the end. The second to last boss was a pretty interesting fight as well. Obviously, the Jaina fight is crazy.
Yeah.
So, if we're trying to compare, like it's hard to like take Uldir and compare it to Castle Nathria, because I feel like they're different feels of raids, but maybe Battle for Czar lore is a little bit closer. Eternal Palace, Crucible Storm was another one that was kind of interesting because it was only 2 bosses, but at heroic level it was difficult, but at mythic level it was insanely difficult. So, kind of comparing it to that a little bit. Castle Nathria, I feel like in a lot of its regards is it feels pretty stiff right now, just because when we were coming into this expansion, a lot of us were struggling to find ways to get gear. Obviously there's things like PvP and there's Mythic Plus and rating, but all of that kind of got slowed down significantly. Mm-hmm. So the character power levels kind of felt really lacking at first. Not to mention Castle Nathria was pretty overtuned at first. They've been tuning it back almost, it feels like nonstop since launch.
Happy Darkseid got knocked that last week.
Right. So, and then like there's other things that I think make it difficult. I've read a lot of stuff on forums that people talk about, like Castle Nathria doesn't feel great to re-clear because it's not like your power level makes it easier each week. You're kind of constantly playing this game of, like, you still have to perfectly do mechanics and you still have to hold DPS at certain situations, which doesn't feel like you're getting stronger as the expansion or the tier really goes on.
Do you think that that Blizzard decided, hey, let's give them that harder difficulty? Let's say, like, for instance, you have Uldir, which is like level 1, and then you have Castle of Dazarlor, which was level 2, and you're kind of comparing this to kind of like that level 2 status. Do you think that they're trying to say, hey, we're gonna have to take this take this expansion and kind of step it up a notch, make it a little more difficult, and kind of like start at that level and see who can make it and kind of push forward past that?
I mean, I think there was some design philosophy. I think a lot of it has to do with they took a stance kind of early in this expansion that, you know, mythic level rating is supposed to be the best possible gear you get. And then, you know, like some of the really high end PvP, that's supposed to be some of the best gear you get. And I think they want to try to make difficulty representative of that, but it doesn't always play out perfectly that way. You know, obviously, like Mythic Plus, when we talk about that, it's an infinitely scalable difficulty, and there doesn't really seem to be any parity when it comes to like reward systems like that. So it's kind of it seems like it's a strategy that they're trying to go for, but it also kind of seems half-witted, and they're not really like following through across the board.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Moggom?
No, I think he hit it dead on there. Like the rating system, I think that what they did was they realized in BFA that rating didn't have a whole lot of value in terms of heroic compared to anything else. Like Mythic still had better gear, but even that gear, you could get the gear in your chest every week. So there was not a huge gap there. It was basically like, I can run Mythic Pluses over and over and over and over and get better gear than heroic gear. Why even go into a raid if I'm not a Mythic raider? Then I could actually get gear from my chest, which is better than the raid gear because there's trinkets and other things. So what's the purpose of raiding? So they tried to swing it and go, no, raiding is more important. Please come back to raiding. And they swung it so far that it alienated a bunch of people because now Mythic Pluses are chore gassed again. Like it's a chore to go in and run them. There's no benefit. There's no way to get good gear except for your vault on a weekly basis. You hope and pray. You know, how many tanks, how many people have run a dungeon 30, 40, 50 times so they can upgrade it and it just doesn't drop? I mean, how many tanks are trying to get the DOS trinket? And they're like, it just won't drop for me. And I've run it 30 times. I've run it 4. I mean, I run that.
It kind of cuts both ways too, right? Like, so, you know, you look at things like, you know, you run a 14 each week, you can potentially get a 226 piece out of your vault. If you run 4 of them, like you were talking about on multiple of your characters, you get 2 choices. But the tricky thing is, like, you don't have to time those keys. You don't have to do anything. I mean, obviously you could slog it out. You could be like some of those streams that we've seen where it's like 8 and 9 hours where they're trying to finish one dungeon. But when it comes to like rating and things like that, you only get those rewards if you win. So like,
it's once a week.
You know, right, to get that same quality of piece, you have to have killed 3 mythic bosses. And you know, with raid extends and stuff like that, that makes it really hard for you to do that sometimes. So I'm not saying it's like better or worse, but it's weird that how different that loot system is for each of those, really, you know. And not to mention the whole, like, they changed the amount of raid loot that we got at the very beginning in Mythic, and then, you know, condensed it down, and then have since kind of relaxed on that a lot. But it's still kind of really weird that it's so, there's no parity across all of it, you know. It's so strange.
Well, and then they also removed the bonus rolls. Like that was a huge benefit for raiders, that they could say, I'm going to choose the boss that I want something from and give myself at least another opportunity for that item. And they just completely eliminated that option.
Like, one of the things that I also think is kind of interesting about that is we have the weekly chest, which is good. It kind of fills some of that void, but the chance of you getting something from that raid weekly chest that's useful, I know, Moggom, you've had this problem, but like the chance of you getting something that's useful from that chest is pretty low, probably about as low as the chance you were going to get something on that reroll token anyway. So,
well, I look at it though, at least the reroll token was boss specific. So your loot,
true.
I mean, like your 2 or 3 items.
Like if you're going for a trinket, or if you're going for
but
you know,
instead,
neck,
if you kill 3 bosses or 6 bosses, you're now expanding that ratio way higher.
Well, it's kind of interesting. The two things when it comes to rating. So, like, with my Friday runs with my viewers, like, we were going to do a heroic run. So we ended up killing this past week, when on my monk being my main, in the main raid, I was able to get those 6 kills this week. And, that was a decision that you guys made for us to Vantis Rune for that one last boss to get that kill, so that we were able to get, 2 options in our chest, and also be able for us to start with with going right after a new boss this week, which was a good idea. Oh, Blood Council. So anyway, so the other thing was that I was actually thinking about well, those last two bosses. I'm sorry, the last two bosses in heroic, was Nathria. Uh, I can come in on my monk, get the last 3 kills I need, and then those are going to be loot specific to those 3 heroic bosses. So then I would have those different options, which would be like I was like, all right, well that's a good idea, which didn't pan out that way. But anyway, so it's very interesting that they changed the way that the loot operates, and that was the other subject I wanted to bring up was the way that the loot operates with the loot chest, which you kind of guys already brought up, which was having those different loot options and being specific to the people you kill, because we didn't have that last expansion, and being able for us to kill multiple multiple bosses that give us those specific loot tables. How do you feel that is better than our loot chests of last expansion, which is like literally, hey, you open it up and you get one piece of God knows what,
maybe pants every week for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it was kind of difficult.
I mean,
but
they kind of touched on this. I don't know if you guys watched Sloot's interview with Morgan Day a couple days ago. They were talking about loot experience. One of the questions he specifically brought up was, kind of like how now we have the anima beads and stuff like that we use to go out and get a weapon token or whatever. He was asking questions about that, and Morgan kind of danced around the idea that they're still going to have those weapons that drop from X, Y, and Z bosses, but there's kind of an assumption that your guild is clearing to these levels. And realistically, obviously, limits and echoes and all those guys aside, there's a lot of guilds out there that do mythic and don't clear the whole thing. So waiting to get to the Sire Denathrius weapon or the Stone Legion General's weapon, it's kind of hard sometimes. If that's the way that they're designing the game, where you have to get to those bosses and clear those bosses to get those things, it feels bad in that regard. And that's kind of also the same problem that happens with the vault. If you're not killing 9 bosses, you're not getting probably a decent chance or enough of a number cross section to really be oh, well, maybe I'll get something that's useful, like Moggom's talking about, where the tricky thing too is that it's not necessarily specific to bosses. So just because you clear that 3rd slot doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting a Stone Legion General or a Sire Denathrius piece that's that higher eye level or more sought after or things like that. It's just kind of random. Obviously there's a chance that it opens up and unlocks that loot, but it doesn't guarantee that you're going to get anything remotely useful.
Do you feel that like they were talking about the bonus roll, like Moggom was saying, the bonus rolls, do you think that's a better option to have than having all these multiple different chest options?
I do and I don't. Obviously, if it's a bonus roll that's implemented at the same level that we've experienced in the past, I think it would be really frustrating again. It's a different kind of disappointment, I guess. But there's other regions, in some of the Asian regions, they don't allow for things like gambling. So if you were to bonus roll, you'll get a piece of loot. It may not necessarily be something that's what you want, but at least you get a piece of loot out of it. And I think that's kind of a more interesting idea. I'd like to see that. The other thing that I've seen that seems to be consistent with PvP and with Mythic Plus is there is at least some sort of currency system that gives you something over time. And maybe there's a way you can either buy out a piece that you want from a raid or upgrade a piece that you want from a raid. Maybe I don't know exactly how I would make that work, but it would be kind of interesting to see if there was more of a way to slow burn it instead of just being instant gratification and you automatically get it. So obviously there's the risk of some people will game systems like that, but I think when we're talking about the overall raiding environment, I think it's probably more realistic for them to do something like that,
What do you think about the idea that after you've looted that item, you're able to lock it out? You've looted it once, not just, oh, I can lock out everything I don't want. But let's say you loot a shoulders off of Hungering. And you're like, I don't wanna see those shoulders again. I can now click those off of my loot table to where I cannot see them again if I don't want them. And now my loot table is just whatever's left. So this way you're not recycling the same item over and over. You can leave it if you want to be able to trade it.
Yeah.
But if you
I was gonna say,
have not
like,
seen it-
in the world of personal loot, that's tricky, right? Because
Well,
like
and
there's a
that's
lot
why
of
I'm saying-
times.
That's why I'm saying if you've gotten it, you can lock it out. You can't just arbitrarily lock it out. So let's say you got a weapon. You could say, I'm gonna continue to try to get that weapon to be able to pass it. But if I haven't, but like, like, how many people want the trinket off of Sun King? But they've gotten a
Mhm.
different item. Lock that item out to where eventually it becomes, if you get an item, it's going to be forced to be it. One way or another, come hell or high water, you'll get it. And now there's more value to continuously keep fighting these fights because the chance of that item becomes higher and higher and higher and higher until it drops for you. And and it's like you said, it's over time. It's not instant gratification because you can't force that off the bat, but you can get there. Just like how you could do an off spec and do the same thing. Because there are items that go across different specs. You could say, I've gotten these. I want this one item. I don't know. It's just an idea that gives people a little bit of holding onto what they're doing instead of just completely randomized and saying, I hope an item drops and I hope it's that one item, even though it's going to be the same one 4 times in a row.
Do you guys feel like, I know this is not really one of those part of the topic that we were planning on talking about, but it's actually pretty nice to think of. Personal loot, do you think that is something that should be changed in comparison to how it used to be prior to personal loot?
I mean, I'll go on record right now and say that I understand why they implemented personal loot. I don't like it. And a lot of it has to do with I get to play in a community of people that seem to care mostly about each other and growing the raid as a unit instead of an individual all the time. So I could see where like my viewpoint of personal loot compared to like the pug world and things like that is very different. But I much rather enjoyed the communal aspect, the feeling of like there's a trinket that drops for me that I absolutely do not want. I would rather give it to Snaly or give it to Moggom and feel like our raid is growing because of it. In the world of personal loot, that doesn't happen all the time. Especially when you're talking about things that are like item level upgrades for you. Like, yes, it's an item level upgrade, but it's maybe not a performance upgrade a lot of times, especially in like the DPS world. So, it just feels bad to get like an item and not be able to trade it or, I mean, I know they've relaxed some of those rules.
Oh yeah, that's annoying.
But I really think a lot of it needs to either melt away or something like that to make it even more better.
They used to have free for all and master loot. Couldn't they
Right.
just implement master loot, personal loot? To where if you're a guild, you could say, we're going back to the old system. If you're not, then you set it to whatever it is.
I was gonna say when you end up setting up the raid itself, just to have an option.
That's
Being
what I
like,
meant.
That's like being
Well,
like if it's a pug, it
I know-
automatically goes to personal loot. If you're not a pug, you can opt to do it because
Right.
that's I think.
So do you know
better.
the little guild tag thing that pops up on the mini map when you have like, I think I can't remember what the percentage of people is, say like 17 out of 20 people.
Sure,
It becomes a guild raid at that point. There was a movement for a while for people to say, like, if that happens, can we, at least have the option to go into like a hook that'll say, can I set this up as master loot? And they went against it. And honestly, at the end of the day, like the real reason that they don't want us to do master loot is they don't have the services anymore to deal with some of these tickets where something goes wrong, where,
Sure.
Something was set in game in a pug or whatever, and it didn't fall through that way when it came time for actually looting to happen. And there's loot disputes. Like they just don't staff the same amount of like customer service agents that they used to be able to handle these kind of things. And honestly, I think that change was the real reason that happened. It's just it's under the thinly veiled guise of, oh, it's better for everybody because nobody's going to get screwed on a personal loot. But it was really just a business decision. And I get it. But that doesn't mean that we like it as a community, right?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of why they wanted to do that in general. Like, it doesn't make sense, and I'm just like,
Well, I mean,
Give
it
me- give
makes
me a break.
sense. It's not what you want to hear. Business sense, it makes sense. It doesn't make sense for guilds. It doesn't make sense for people who
flip
aren't
a table.
involved.
Right.
Well, and that's
basically.
why I think that the Nurgle point of when it becomes a raid through a guild, that could be the only option where it lets it do it. And if you're going into a guild raid, you're taking on that responsibility and
Mhm.
that risk. And if you're going into a pug, it just
mean,
auto does it.
I don't know how much you guys have been playing, but like there were times when the old class tokens used to be a thing, when it came to like
Oh,
tier
yeah.
gear and stuff like
I
that.
play
we-
since the
we-
beginning.
Yeah, we
so-
both
There-
been playing.
There were
since,
there
like,
were numerous
beginning.
pugs that you could go into a raid and they'd be like Vanquisher token completely locked out. You
Yeah.
can't have it.
Yeah.
And honestly, as a decision, I would make a choice. Maybe I don't care about Vanquisher pieces. I just want a trinket or something like that. And I don't care, or I do care, and I make that choice going into those groups.
Yeah.
Now, I realize that that's not always the case, but there were some rails for us to touch and be like, no, this is probably a little bit too much. Or, I made those choices sometimes to be like, no, I don't want to be a part of this because I'm not going to waste my time for 2 or 3 hours just to not get something that would be helpful for my character to grow. So
Do you think they should go back to the token method for loot for raids? Because for me personally, I think that the token method for raid, it kind of it worked out well because you'd be able to distribute like specific pieces of loot to specific people that needed them. Because like right now, like all the leather pieces that drop, I feel like are like the beginning of the raid are not conducive to me. But if I ended up getting a piece of a token piece that I was like, oh, I could use this. This is nice.
I mean,
Or
this
Dodds can use this. Let me give it to him.
this cuts
Like,
both
I can
ways.
do it.
This cuts both ways. So I do think there is value of, we get a Vanquisher trinket or a Vanquisher token instead of a piece of cloth that a mage could use. Because at least it opens and expands options for, we've gotten 5 of the mage chest. We would like one of those to go to somebody else on the Vanquisher token. So like there's value in that. But then there's also the kind of like raid meta where a lot of guilds, especially at like the high end, which I realize it's not us, but guilds at like the really high end will do things like absolutely surpass healers and tanks for loot immediately so that they can beat DPS checks later in the tier. And while that's nice from a speed clear perspective, it doesn't feel good at a community level when it's like, well, you're a tank and you're a healer and we'll get to you when we get to you, so from a like a raw strategy perspective, it feels kind of bad. But at the end of the day, when we're talking about the bigger community impact, I think it is a good thing, because it is helping get gear into the people of the hands of the people that need it, essentially, and making it easier for people to kind of spread it around and not just waste pieces each week. I mean, how many times have we talked about like, this drop from Shriekwing or this drop from Zymox? Like, how many times are we going to get the Zymox ring? I mean, like, seriously.
I mean,
So
3 a week.
Right.
We get three or 4 a week out of our 4
Right.
loot. It's a little. I think it's a little annoying. I really wish they figured out a way how to make it so we can kind of be more useful for us to go in and not feel that it's a waste.
Yeah, what I miss the most is I miss the tier sets. I really wish that they had the class sets. I
mean, it's
was a
coming back.
huge-
So
I was a huge fan of being able to go like, I'm tier 1, I'm tier 2, I'm tier 3, and getting those sets, getting that look, getting those set bonuses. Like that to me, it just always felt good.
honestly, I mean, a lot of people talk about how balance is kind of wonky sometimes. I thought set bonuses were great for that because they could take a class that was borderline unfunctional and sneak a decent set bonus into it for a tier, and all of a sudden, boom, it's back in the meta. It's back, it's able to be serviceable or even fun in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
And I really wish, I mean, I absolutely, I 100% agree. I'm ready for sets to come back. So
Yeah. I agree. I think having those sets come back, making like each class look more individualized is a great thing, because now you're running through and you could be fighting something that you think is a rogue, but then realize it's a monk. Like you're like,
Yeah, but
what? Huh?
that's never gonna come back. Transmog is always going to
Yeah.
have that look off, and that's fine. I'm just talking about the idea that when you look at a paladin, a warrior, a death knight, and they're all wearing the exact same
That's what
items,
I'm
and
talking
there's
about. It's
I'm
Yeah.
crap.
I don't mean in terms of transmog. I'm talking literal items. Like I
Oh
want to
yeah.
be able to have a warrior set, or I want to be able
Oh
to
yeah.
have a
Yeah.
shaman set where I'm getting a bonus for this, and there's an actual bonus for that, which then extends the benefit of being a raider even
Mhm.
another step. Right now, oh, I can get a 226 item from my vault from a mythic,
Well, and
my mythic quest, or
turn
from a raid.
turn that stuff off in other forms of content too. Like I have no problem. Like obviously there were issues where like set bonuses crept into PvP and created
That's
problems.
fine.
There were
Turn it
some
off.
issues. Yeah, turn all that stuff off. I have no, but I mean, they keep talking about they want to do things where PvP gear is good for PvP and raid gear is good for raiding. Like this is a perfect example of that kind of thing. So like there will always be winners and losers when it comes to set bonuses and stuff like that. But I do think it is a really good thing. Like you said, it's a very strong class identifier. And some of those things have stuck with us and crept into talent slots or other things that are almost just kind of like meta to a class now. Like it feels very warlock or it feels very warrior or something like that. So I'd like to see more of that kind of stuff, and would even like to see kind of cool ways to choose some of your set bonuses,
Oh, there you
but
go.
that's probably a little bit further down the road.
Yeah,
That's a little dangerous. But
But
yes.
I'm also
Right,
looking
right.
at it from the point of view of that they had Mythic Pluses be its own path to
Mhm.
getting gear.
Mhm.
And then it became too intensive where people could run
Right.
it over and over and over to get the gear. So now they've swung it to where raiding is the best way, or PvP. And running a dungeon over and over doesn't net a value. This could then balance it back out where you could increase the item level of gear in a Mythic Plus back to where it used to be, and it's not going to feel as horrifying in comparison to raid gear because you're getting those set bonuses. So now there's a balance where if you want to be a raider, you run your raid bosses, you can get your tier set, you can get your items. If you don't want to be a raider, fine. You can run mythic pluses. Here's your mythic plus gear. Here's the bonus for it. Here's the gear that you're going to get. If you want to be a PvPer, fine. Here's this. And guess what? The tier sets, they don't transfer. So you're not
Mhm.
going to be able to use those bonuses in PvP. You're now segmenting people into their own section, which don't cross. If you want to do more, fine, but you don't have to. And you're not
Mhm.
basically forcing people into certain sections and saying, sorry about your luck if you're not doing exactly what we're pushing you into. And I don't know. I think that gives a value across the board for whatever you choose to do. And there are benefits for all of them, and there are things you'll miss out on. And
Sure.
that's the benefit. Play more or miss out on some stuff.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a tricky balance, right? Because you want to have it so like if you were to be a PvPer exclusively, and then all of a sudden you decided that you wanted to try your hand at raiding, you wouldn't just be absolutely worthless or anything like
Sure.
that. So
Mhm.
there needs to be some, like, I wouldn't say crossover value, but like just some value of your expertise and experience that carries over. But I still like the idea of a PvPer with his PvP gear should beat me, who's not typically a PvPer
Mhm.
with my non-PvP gear. Like that should, obviously there's skills and things like that and whatnot, but as far as just, I don't want it to be like I'm racing a Ferrari versus them racing a Pinto, but
Mhm.
you want it to be at least reasonably comparable, right? So,
What about resilience?
well, I mean,
I didn't hate that.
Mhm.
I didn't dislike templates either, but that's
Sure,
probably
sure,
gonna
sure,
get.
sure.
I mean,
But I'm
I
just
I
saying,
know why people didn't like it, but
I thought it
it,
gave value where it could be and should be.
yeah.
And it made it to where PvP had something and it was only able to got there. And now there's nothing. Like it's just literally,
Mhm.
oh, you can pick your item here for getting
I mean,
conquest.
they're coming out with this Sanctum of Domination gems set bonus, whatever you want to call it, which is a little bit of something, but I need to see more of it to feel like it's a real raid exclusive thing. I don't feel it yet, but from what I've seen on PTR and stuff like that, it hadn't really like blown my socks off or anything like that. But I mean, obviously, like I said, we talk about, we want something to be kind of good for all of the different silos, but not to where it's like if you want to change silos, you're just completely screwed.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So, I kind of want to take a second to kind of bring everything kind of back around to rating. Excuse me. As a whole, apparently I swallowed a fly. Excuse me. So when you kind of look at how raids are now, one of the most interesting time during raids is when you're transitioning from one expansion to another, because so much is changing, and we kind of briefly touched on it, but we didn't kind of dive into it a little bit. But when we ended up BFA, we had a couple of different things, which is not normal. We had corruption, and we had a whole bunch of different type of like
Essences, Heart of Azeroth,
yeah, we had
Azerite pieces. Yeah,
we
I
had
mean, it was just a lot of stuff.
We had a lot of stuff. We kind of felt, as you like to call it, just like Warlord Hank, he felt thick. Like, you felt like a beast. You kind of like walked into it, and you kind of like could take on anything. And now, as for walking into this expansion and going into Castle Nathria, I felt like I was like a pencil trying to beat off like an ox. I don't know how else to kind of a pen. I don't know. I really had no analogy there. I went in blind. I should have wrote something better down than that. So so like you kind of like walked into it pretty blindly, that we didn't know what we were doing, and we kind of felt really, really weak. Do you think that was because of the transition from expansion to expansion, or do you think it was just because they didn't transition it properly in the way of, hey, we're taking all this stuff away from you to start from scratch. You guys got to figure out how to make yourself better. How do you guys feel? How do you feel?
Can I say it's worse than that? It's worse than that.
Can we start with Moggom first? Because I know you could probably let's Moggom, you start us off, and then we'll go to Nergul. So
I think the issue was that in BFA, they accidentally went so far in terms of, you could just walk in with the correct corruption gear, which you could buy now, and you could just kind of like fiddle your way through your abilities and have procs go off, and your numbers would just skyrocket. And it wasn't skill based as much. It was more of just, if you have the corruption, you're going to pump, or you're going to be a good healer, or you're just going to survive forever as a tank. And it removed the gap of better players from players who weren't very good. And I think that was the issue, that they felt that players said, I'm good at this game. I'm doing everything in my power that I can, and I'm 3% higher than someone else. Like, there's no variance there between me and someone else. And now I think that they've gone the other way, because I know that when I ran the numbers right when the expansion hit, when we finally got all the items, that the variance between every option of gear for a Fury Warrior, if you rotated them in and out to get every variation possible, it was like 150 damage difference. They basically made it to where it was 100% skill based. There's no more gear, there's no more nothing. It's, if you can do the right rotation and know how to play your class, you're going to be at the top, and then it's just going to drop from there like a rock. And that, I think, is what they've gone with. So that's why they removed all these other abilities, all these other things that made you feel strong, which were fake. And they've made it to where, if you want to pull numbers, even though the numbers are still kind of like, they feel bad compared to what we're used to, the only way to show them was to actually be doing your stuff correctly. And it shows now, because you can see wild discrepancies between people of the same class, of the same spec, even basically the same year, which we know historically now, your primary stat is your main driver. It's not your secondary stats anymore. So when you see big gaps, you know it's not, oh, my gear's not right. No. Your gear doesn't make a big difference as much. Now you're not playing your class correctly. And I think that's what they were going with. But I'll be interested to hear what Nergul has to say on the topic.
All right, so let's back up. You were talking about like what we lost in BFA. So, there's things like essences, there's things like Azerite gear, there's things like corruptions. So if you look back at a lot of the expansions, Blizzard takes chances late in the expansion. Like they'll come out like at the end of MOP. They gave us RPPM trinkets. I don't know if you guys remember all that. They tried some really weird things with trinkets at the end of HFC in Warlords of Draenor with like all of the I can't even remember what the road trinket was called, but the really janky one that you did damage. It didn't actually go through, and then it went through as a huge burst with a plus percentage on top of it. There was the prism trinket that was really good from Manaroth. And there was all these other just weird things that they tried then. So same thing kind of happened at the end of Legion. You know, like artifacts were crazy, legendaries were crazy. And you know, they keep loading us up over the course of the expansion and then just, you know, letting it go crazy at the end. And then they've got to kind of reel it back. You know, everybody calls it borrowed power, but it was worse this time because not only did we have all of that, we had an item level squish and a character level squish on top of that. So I think what happened was some of the tuning got out of hand because there were just so much of a rollback in like character power that when we rolled into some of these new instances and dungeons and stuff like that, it was significantly harder. And, you know, like we talk about, we don't have all of those systems on top of systems on top of systems now. And to Moggom's point, it is very much more skill-based when we're comparing somebody who's, say, 220 eye level to 220 eye level. But what's really weird, and they've talked about this in a couple of the interviews with the devs, is it feels like the difference between 200 eye level and 220 eye level now is insane. It's stupid ridiculous. And in a good way, like, you know, it's nice to feel like your character is progressing, and the only way you can really kind of do that today is through eye level. But on the other side of it, we're back to that old gear score meta, and I don't care about you if you're not this gear score and all that other stuff. And it gets kind of like wonky and it doesn't feel good. Like, you know, obviously we don't want to get into a place where, you know, if I'm just rolling my face across the keyboard, I'm doing as much damage as the best players in the world. But on the other hand, you know, like we want to have opportunities for classes to be something that like it's easy to get into it, but it's hard to master it. You know, there's a value in that person who extends it and does it right and stuff like that. But it's not like you're on the floor and worthless or a complete carry if you're not perfect in your execution. So that's what I think, at least. But I mean, the changes, there are some things in Castle Nathria that I feel like are difficult, but rating is rating. Like they're going to throw different stuff at us all the time. And sometimes it'll make one class look good. Sometimes it'll make another class look good. Right now there's some things that make certain classes look great. You know, they have really good kits. They are extremely marketable in all aspects of rating. And, you know, same with Mythic Plus, same with PvP. And not a lot of times do all those things line up perfectly where a balanced druid is a god at all three of them. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but I also think it really makes it hard to sustain specific rosters and raids and like even smaller rosters and things like PvP and Mythic Plus and stuff like that. So for what it's worth.
Yeah, and I think it feels bad. I think it feels bad as well, Nergul, that you could be a class who does well in raiding, and then you also want to be a Mythic Pluser, and when you go in there, you just can't compete. Like there just literally is nothing you can do. And I mean, look at Snaly. Like his healing is just, it's far below other classes, and he has not a huge IO, and he's like top 100 on the server. But then you look at other classes, and he would be like 800th. Like it just shows you that the gap.
Wait a minute, are you trying to say I'm not that good? Are you trying to say I'm not that good at healing?
No, I'm saying that there's that many more people that are playing that class that do it.
Yeah.
And I think the gap is too big between one class to another class in a Mythic Plus, as well as in raiding. I mean, raiding I think is a little more close, but I think Mythic Plus it's like you see the same 5 classes, same 6 classes.
I think
maybe.
the big difference with raiding is there's a lot of variety in the boss fights that allow certain specs to kind of like, yeah, you're not going to win top DPS on every single raid fight, but you may be able to be really good for 3 fights and then at least contribute for 2 or 3 more. And then for the rest of them, like you're just trying to do your mechanics and be part of the fight, you know, like, so I don't think that's a bad design philosophy. I mean, obviously, you
No.
want people to feel good sometimes, but Mythic Plus, I think, it's either you're set up to blow up trash or you're set up to blow up bosses. That's pretty much
That's
it.
it.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
honestly,
Yeah,
like
that's it.
outside of like things like survival and stuff like that. But I mean, for the most part, that's really it.
Yeah.
Like, you're either a fortified or a tyrannical player at that point.
And that's bad since it goes back and forth every week. You know,
Right.
there are weeks where if you're a tyrannical guy, then
Well, it's like
fortified weeks, you're
you
just
and
like, what am I doing here?
Moggom, it's like you in Trouble. It's like when you're playing Fury, you can smoke trash.
Oh
but
yeah.
but Trouble will smoke single target.
Yeah, and he does every time. You know,
Yeah.
we
I
go
mean,
through the trash.
that's his
I'm
class
getting,
design, right?
I'm
Yeah.
getting 15K a pull, like 10 to
Mhm.
15 every pull every time. Like that's just, I'm rolling. Then I get on a boss and I do 6, and he does 23, and I'm like, okay. I mean, it's fine. I don't need to be the top every pull, but you know, then there are certain classes where
It's
there are 7K on AE and then there are 8K on bosses. Like there's no
Well,
ceiling for them.
Well, there's a couple things. I just want to answer a couple things in chat. Mythic Pluses, you really can't slack anymore. There's very little room for error. For rating, I still think you can't slack anymore, and that is it's actually been kind of proven, even with us doing our viewer rates on Friday nights. Like we've had to kind of pull down the roster a little bit because we have to be careful of how many lower geared people we can pull in, because you really don't have that room for error anymore. So it's not exactly the way it can be anymore. And I'm not talking about Mythic. I'm talking about like us trying to do heroic.
There's value of certain, like, kind of talking on what Davey's saying, like about like certain classes hiding in raids. Like, you could say it's hiding. There's more space for somebody to be like, okay, 5 people are really doing these mechanics. One person is just pumping DPS, like that's their job. And then, somebody else is really just killing the healing meter. Somebody else is kind of handling most of the tanking things. But the higher the difficulty that goes, the less of that opportunity is. Like, one person makes a mistake on Zymox, we all die. And there's a lot of those kind of things in those fights. So
is that kind of like when you stand in a trap?
Yes, standing in a trap is a really bad thing, and it hurts your raid.
Who did that? It wasn't me. or rolling off the side of a cliff. But like coming back to what you're saying about like the classes. I know we're getting close to time, but talking about the class specificness, it being in Castle Nathria, I think that there are some fights that are very super class specific. I would say Huntsman having immunities, Zymox having immunities to being able to clear traps. I really have seen the
Seed
difference.
runners.
I'm sorry?
Seed runners on Zymox.
Yeah, you need that stuff. I will say that, all joking aside, Sun King, definitely having a Mistweaver Monk in there, being able to pump, it helps.
Well, like 30 priests to just PI everyone and innervate.
Just PI me. That's
just
all
PIs
I need.
and
Innervates
and,
to me.
Like, if you just have that, then the fight becomes so much easier. Because we noticed that, like, when we were missing some of our innervates and PIs, we're like, oh, like you could see the gap start to grow there, and you don't realize it until you don't have 3 of them or 2 of them at a time. You only have 1, and yeah, I mean it. Sometimes that doesn't feel great when you're forcing a number of certain classes in there.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's one of the reasons that I've never liked all of the niche type raid comps, like the 3 tanks and the 4 tanks and all that other stuff that like people do to like kind of cheese past mechanics. When you do those kind of things, it ends up creating problems. And that's kind of an issue that we have with Sun King sometimes for us. So we don't do it the normal way. So it makes it hard for us when certain people of those groups and classes and stuff like that aren't available for us every week.
Well, think about it. Every time we run our viewer raids, people get confused when we start doing Blood Council, even on normal, because the way that we kill Blood Council is vastly different than the standard that everyone else
Everybody's
does.
afraid of the ads, man.
Yeah.
Everybody's afraid of the ads.
Everyone's afraid of the ads, and they're really like nothing.
Yeah, they're nothing.
Yeah.
They're really nothing. And the thing is that we also have pretty damn good healers. And I'm not just saying that, but we have, excluding me, you can exclude me if that makes you feel better, Moggom. But like, we have some pretty good healers to be able to counter that, and I think that we're kind of lucky in that aspect in comparison to other people.
We have a good leader who keeps
yes,
us in line.
I will say that and I'm not trying to blow smoke up you.
No.
But like I've been in multiple different raid scenarios, and you are by far the one of the best raid leaders I've ever seen, encountered, and heard. I think Max is better than you, but
Max is very much better than me.
Yeah, but
very much better than me.
That's what I'm saying. Like there are people in comparison, but at least you make it enjoyable, and thank you for that.
Could you imagine if Nergul got to be the 21st raider?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of times where I've kicked it during a fight, and
I mean,
it's
that's
super easy for me to run things from that position.
He would be. It would make him be even better. Like the thing I like best about Nergul is the environment you feel. You don't feel the screaming and the pressure of, oh God, it's more of a together, let's get this done. And let's pick each other up, let's get it done. And that's abnormal. I'm sorry.
I mean, I've been a part of that screaming guild before, and I didn't like it. I didn't like it. Like there's value to kind of using the prod every once in a while, but sure. I think it gets kind of old. This is, for a lot of people, this is a game. We're trying to have fun. Burnout's real. A lot of us are adults. We're not used to having to scrap and fight with each other in a fun environment. We get enough of that in the real world. We don't need that crap here. So
I also think that the three of us are we're not casual. We're not casual WoW players.
Absolutely not.
I mean, like, we pretty much wake up in the morning, we log into WoW, we play WoW for like 8 to 12 hours a day, and then log off. But like that,
and then dream about it.
And then, I don't dream about WoW. I just dream that I don't get smacked in the face by my wife while she turns around sleeping with another pillow. Like, that's what I just don't want to happen to me. But all in all, I think rating this expansion has been one of my favorites. And I think that's why I'm still in it.
So
thank you.
We got like 2 minutes. Can we discuss the difference between Cherry Coke and Dr. Pepper?
First of all right.
So I want to talk about, since we're talking about rating, I mean, I want to talk about the myth that if you go up in difficulty, the boss health goes up. Did you guys know that?
Oh, can we? Yeah, let's talk about that. Snaly, you want to go first?
So, no, why don't we tell everybody where you can find you, Moggom? Why don't we go?
That was great.
Say one thing in a raid.
And for anyone who's here, if you want to find it, go to his Discord, and under clips, you'll find the clip of him asking about raid bosses and if they have more hit points than they do in heroic, because they do seem like they live a little longer and they hit a little harder. And this was last week, 6 months into the expansion. He's just figuring this out.
It wasn't what I was asking.
6 of 10 Mythic Raider, guys. 6 of 10.
Anyway, guys, I don't look at bars. I just look at our bars, our health bars. It's all I look at. Do you remember when we were doing Sun King and I was like, what's our percentage? And people were like, don't you see the percentage? And I'm like, no, I only see the raw
45
number.
and 90. Still 45 and 90.
So
will always be 45 and 90.
I only know that it's 600. I only know it is 6.02 million for Sun King until he goes into the first percentage. So like, I actually know the number of percentages because I don't have actual percentages. So love you guys. Anyway, so Moggom, tell us where we can find you.
Twitch.tv/xmoggomx is where you'll find me if you're looking at me on Twitch. And then I have Instagram, but I don't really have any other social media. I try to stay away from them. So, and then you'll find me with Snalydo, running Mythic bosses twice a week and raiding with Nergul and Snalydo 2 other nights a week.
There you go. And Saturdays? No Saturdays?
Saturdays we run our own Mythic boss carries, runs with viewers, but it's brand new. We're doing like 12s. It's more of a laid back, just who wants to come, who wants to get a run in, you have an alt, whatever. Yeah, just come on and let's have fun. Let's get it done and see where we can go with it. Try to pass loot around.
Sounds good. Nergul, how about yourself?
I mean, I rarely ever stream. So if you ever want to watch twitch.tv/Nergul, the last thing I did was raid testing. So you can come in there and maybe watch some raid testing if you want to see that for Sanctum Domination. But I'm bad about I don't stream enough. So
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, God, that was pretty much all I was gonna say.
I was gonna say, are you? I was gonna say, are you excited at least?
Yeah, actually, there's some really cool fights. There's some things I want to see change. I'm not exactly excited about the Terragru fight because there's some really dirty things that you can do. I don't know if you remember some of those Torghast powers where you can blow yourself up really big, and if you run into somebody, you push them back. That could be really catastrophic for some of those mechanics where you have to stack in really small spaces and somebody comes running in there and just wrecking balls everybody out of the play. But as far as like some of the bosses, like they look fun, they're tuned really well. Everything I've seen makes this look like this is going to be a fun raid. It's just
Good.
the big issue is when are we going to get it? So hopefully sooner than later.
Excellent. Awesome.
Please.
Yes, please. And you guys all know me, Snalydo. You know where to find me. You can find me here on this channel here. Here every single pretty much day, Monday to Friday, 9 to 2 in the morning, and from 7 to 11 at night. I'm going to be probably expanding a little more to doing another night during the weekends, just when I get some time, probably late. So if you see me hop on, it probably will be like 10 o'clock at night on a Sunday until maybe 1 or 2. So it all depends upon how things are going. And if you ever need Mythic Plus friends, you can always find them here during the day, during the night, and also we raid on Tuesdays and Wednesday nights. If you're going to check us out, Nergul's gonna send me a case of Dr. Pepper and Cherry Coke, and we're gonna have a taste test video one day, and yeah, that's about it. And I'm on Snalydo on all social medias. So, all right, everyone, thank you very much for hanging out today. Greatly
Luck
appreciate
on chess.
Yes.
Yeah, good luck on your
everyone,
vaults.
good luck on your
Post
vaults.
your pictures in his Discord.
Yes, please post the pictures in your Discord if you are going to be doing that. We are going to be swapping over and doing that shortly ourselves. So thank you all again. Dream big, keep gaming, and we will see you all next week. Have a fantastic day. Bye, everybody. See you.